We're talking about group work that works today. So imagine doing a group project in your class and seeing fun comments like this at the end. I always ask my students to do some written feedback on their group work. So they often, when I announce that we're going to be doing a group project in class, there's some groans and some eye rolls and some la. So they don't always love it and they're not usually excited about having to do a group work. But generally, after we go through the project and on the other end, they were really excited about it and really happy about it. And it goes really well. So that's what I'm here to share is how I've made it go really well for my students. So we already talked about me. So you guys got my intro. I've got 5 sections this semester of business and professional communication. So I've been doing this group project since I've been here at UT. I've been doing group projects long before that. But so I started teaching in 1996 up at various universities in the Chicago area where I am from. And so I also get to serve as a faculty senator this year, next 3 years, actually, very exciting. So anyway, hi, everybody. All right, so that's me. All right, so let's talk about what we're going to cover today. First, I'm going to just share with you some of the basics of small group communication. Why? Because when you understand the basics of how small group comm works, it is easier to explain to students what they need to know so that they can be successful in the group. So we're going to go over that. We're going to talk about the impact of group norms and rules. We'll talk about the emergence of task and social roles and the different types of roles that people play when they are working in groups together, and then how to help students navigate group dynamics. All right. So also my classes are small. I've only got 23. So I'm used to people popping in and out and asking questions all the time. So feel free, if you have any questions, unmute yourself, go ahead and ask in the chat. And I am happy to answer questions anywhere along the way. Sound good? So first, speaking of chat, share in the chat, if you would, in 1 to 3 words, how do you feel about group projects in your classes? Are you on the happy, lovey face side, like, love them, they're awesome? Or like, I know I should probably do them, so all right. Or like, no, I don't like them. I hated them. I always have bad experiences with them. My students don't love them. Like, how do you feel in the chat? All right, let's see what we got. Thank you for answering. Love them. Thanks, Molly. Molly loves them. Benjamin, awesome. Dr. Bob loves them. I am preaching to the choir here today. Really like them. Up, Joey's got a little, I hear you. Beneficial and necessary. Yeah, excited to implement. Awesome. Engaging, love them, fantastic. Pretty good as long as everyone jumps in. Yes, that's the key, Jason. It is, absolutely. So getting everybody to participate as equally as possible, that's kind of the thing. All right, so here's a follow-up question. In 1 to 3 words, how do you think your students feel about group projects in your classes? What do you think? Are they excited about them? When you announce it, I'm not, well, we won't talk about it on the other end, but like at the beginning, when you're like, we're going to do a group project, it's going to be great. What do they say? Let's see. Students dread them. Yep. Pretty good as long as everybody jumps in. Yep. Meh until they know. Yep. They get to know their peers. Mix. Some love, some hate. They don't like them. Pretty good. When I announce dread and anxiety, yeah, a lot of dread and anxiety. You're right. A lot of eye rolling. I get the same responses. Mine are optional, so if they want to participate, they can. Oh, that's interesting. Interested but cautious of unbalanced workload. Yep, initially worried, but most of them really happy at the end. I love that. A lot of apprehension. Yeah, so kind of a mixed bag all over the place. I love that there's some of them, Samuel, you've got some that are interested and willing to try. That's really cool. Slackers are happy. Achievers dread them. Yes, so you'll hear how I talk about the what we talk about to the slackers. That makes them less slacky. So we'll talk about roles and how they emerge and that kind of thing a little bit. All right, so let's dig in and get to the characteristics of a small group. So when we're talking about small group and small group communication, we're not just talking about turn to your neighbors and have this conversation, think, pair, share for 10 minutes in class. A small group is a group that has a specified goal. And I'm going to go through a few of these and upcoming slides a little bit deeper, but they've got a specific goal. So in my class, the goal that they have to do is they have to put together an infomercial. Now, my class is not an infomercial class. It's not a video class. It's not a mass media class. It's not an advertising class. It's just business and professional communication. And one of our assignments is they have to do a small group project. So, and within those parameters, and it meets a vol core requirement. So there's lots of us teaching different kinds of small group projects and having our students go through this, because for us, it's about the exercise of going through the small group project. And once they understand these specifics about being in a small group, can they manage their behavior and being in a small group in a way that they haven't yet previously? So for my class, they're doing an infomercial. And most of them know how to, most of them have their phones and they've made videos of their friends and themselves. And some of them made TikToks and, all of kinds of things. And so some of them have experience with editing, some of them don't. And so it's interesting to see the dynamics of how things play out. But their specific goal in my class, they've got to do an infomercial, and then we have a class presentation where they get to show their infomercial to everyone in the class, and then they do a short speech on their process of working together. All right. So number 2, they should have clear rules and understood norms. We'll talk more about that in the future. Usually they're timed or limited. So for my class, I usually give them about 2 weeks or so to complete this project from the day that I announce it to the day that they present it in class. So that's how long that they are a small group. When I'm teaching this to my students, I talk to them about, because a lot of them are in Greek life, and I'll say, so imagine with your fraternity or sorority, for those of you who are involved in that, that you're working on a fundraiser for your philanthropy at your sorority or fraternity, and you're going to work together with this small committee of people, and maybe there's 15 people working on this, and your job, the event's going to be in 3 months or 4 months. That's a small group. That's a small group project. It's not a class thing, but this is a real life. You're working on this thing, and the goal is to raise money for this philanthropy. So just kind of helping them understand that this is a limited thing. And then when you have achieved the goal, the group disbands and you move on, or the group can decide to do whatever they want to do. Groups are in size at the very small end, 3 up to 18-ish. Depends on which literature you read. I've seen numbers as high in the 20s. I've seen numbers as low as 12. It's kind of all over the board, but the ideal size of a small group is 5 to 7. So depending on the size of your classes, you want to try to get groups that are around that size, that 5 to 7. And I like to tell my students a really ideal group is 5 or 7, because if they decide to do a majority vote situation, we don't end up with 3 and 3, right? So, but I have end up with groups of 6 once in a while, and that's fine. It works out fine. And so this size is 3 to 18. Interdependence. So this piece means that everybody in the group has to rely on everybody else to do their part, or they don't achieve the specific goal, whatever the goal is. And that's a key part to understanding group dynamics and how it works. And we'll talk a little bit more about that in just a little bit. And then number 6, really for our group projects in my class anyway, I don't spend a lot of time focusing on shared identity because they are only together for the 2 weeks. But when I have taught small group in other universities and I've had a longer period of time, we have done fun things like, okay, you need to come up with a name for your group and come up with a mascot for your group and come up with a logo for your group. And what are your group's colors going to be and theme, and kind of get them the sense of like, this is who we are and we're working on this thing. And, like we're number 1. Yeah, yes. So it kind of, the shared identity helps students bond better. It helps the group be more cohesive to meet the end goal. So if you've got time, if you're working, allowing them to do a project over the course of a whole semester, maybe think about how can you help foster ideas for shared identity. I don't have a lot in this presentation about that. I'm taking into consideration that probably most of you are doing your small group projects in a way similar to mine, where we've got a very limited amount of time during the semester to focus on that because we got other things we got to teach. So, all right. So those are the characteristics of a small group. Let's talk about having a clear goal and what that means. So the strategies for you, there's 3 here. The first one is clearly define the assignment. And this is actually more complex than it sounds. Like, I define the assignment, but you really need to define, what does it mean? What does it mean to the students? What do you want them to do? If you can show them what success looks like, which is the last one on the list, if you can show them examples of people who have done this before, they love to see examples so that they have an idea in their head. Okay, this is really cool. What I do in my class is I show them professional infomercials that have existed. So if you remember infomercials, if you've ever run across these, and the shorter form are now popular. Those, so there's purple mattress, and there's laundry detergent ones, and there's ones about photo books, and just interesting kinds of things out there. And so I show them the professional ones. And the reason I show them the professional ones is because if I show them past students' work, then they start to compare themselves to the past students. And so I want them to see, like, this is what it looks like when a professional puts it together. And now you can have your own ideas about how you want to do things. So I show them this, like, this is the highest, most well-produced, amazing kind of video. I recognize we're not in a video class. You're not professional video editors. You're not professional directors. And it's okay. You're going to do your very best with the rest of this assignment. So I clearly define the assignment. I explain and show what success looks like. And then this middle strategy here, explain why. Students always want to know why. When they understand why they're doing a thing, they'll get on board, and they'll be like, okay, I get it. So number one, explain, why are they doing this project, right? So in my class, we're talking about doing a group project. Why are we doing a group project? And I get feedback from the students, and they all get it. They know that they're going to have to work with people someday and a job. And we need to learn how to work with people in a job, all different people, different personalities, et cetera, and so forth. So they get that as far as the why. But if you have a why academically, like, why are we doing this project? What are we here to learn? So for me, this is like, we're having a little meta communication moment, because I teach communication. So they're learning this specific communication skill of group and team building. All right. Then, why are you doing this? Why did you assign this project as a group project instead of solo? And that's key, because there are students, as we all know, if you've ever done a group project, there are some students who want to take the bull by the horns, and they're just going to want to do all the work because they want to get their A, and they want to make sure that is the way it needs to be. And then you have other students, like one of our colleagues said in the chat, like the slackers, they're like, yeah. And so why are we doing this as a group? Why can't I just do this by myself? And so I talk about a video infomercial. Think about it. This is a giant project, and I'm only giving you 2 weeks to do this. So you have to, and this, by the way, leans on that aspect of a group called interdependence. So you've got to lean on everybody else. Everybody else has to do their job in order for this assignment to work. You have to have somebody filming. You have to have people acting. You have to have people put together the script. You have to have people do research. The assignment requires 5 sources as far as research go. We're a little light on the word research for this particular assignment. It's okay. But they have to, so the purpose of an infomercial is to sell a product. And so we talk about, all right, so who's the product for? Who's the audience? What problems does that audience have that this product can solve? So that's where their research comes in. They can go find problems related to that specific audience. So anyway, so why are we doing this as a group instead of, I'm just letting you do this on your own? And it's not because you just felt like being mean, or like, oh, let's just do something else. So why is this project? Why do we have to have this project? And why do we have to have this project as a group? When students understand that, they get it, and they're like, all right, this makes sense to me. Now I know I've got to work with other people. I know what success looks like, and I know what the end goal is. So all of those things right up front at the very beginning, when you assign it, help immensely. All right, that's the first thing. Next is we're going to go to rules and norms. So we want to encourage our students to create rules and norms for their group. What are rules? They're written, they're specific, and they're known by all members. Okay. And I've got on the next slide some examples of rules that students have come up with. So rules are always written, specific, and known by all members. I have them write them down. You can say it out loud as a rule, but I always make them like write it down, text it to each other, put it somewhere so that everybody's clear on what the rule is. Kind of like with us while we do our syllabus, right? Our syllabus is like, here's our class rules. It's written down. And if anybody's got a question, well, let's look back at the syllabus and see what we can see, right? Let's look back at the rules. Is this a rule that we all agree to? Yes, it is. Great. So rules are rules. And then norms are what emerge through group work. So we don't say, oh, let's make this a norm of our group. That's really then a rule. It's so a norm is something that is understood by most, if not all members, and they just kind of emerge. So what does that look like? What does that mean? Well, some of the common student rules that they give me, that they say, all right, so everybody has to show up to all the work sessions. So that's one of the rules they've decided is a good rule for their groups. Everybody has to respond to text messages. So, and then sometimes they say, let's, like, even if you're just giving like a thumbs up or sticking an emoji in the thing, we want everybody to respond to every text message. Okay, that's a rule. No texts after midnight. That's an interesting one to me. I was surprised the first time I heard them say that. I was like, don't you just put your phone on private when you go to bed at night? But apparently they do not. And so this is a big one for a lot of students. Like, do not be texting or emailing after midnight. So my phone's going off in the middle of the night. Like, okay. And then another one that they've written for themselves, if you have a problem with your part, reach out to the group. So those are common student rules that they come up with. All right. So what are examples of norms? So here we are, we're meeting for our group, and Sarah has a kitchen where she lives in her apartment, and she loves baking, and it's like one of her favorite things, and it's a stress reliever for her. And Sarah's always baking cookies. So Sarah brings chocolate chip cookies to the first meeting, and then she brings them again to the next meeting, and it becomes a norm that Sarah's bringing cookies to all the meetings. So that's a fun little norm. Another norm is, hey, where are we going to get together? I don't know, but let's go to the Union and just meet at Starbucks, and we'll start there. So meeting at Starbucks for coffee before we get to work, that's a group norm that comes out of that group. Another group norm could be, all right, so as a rule, we said everybody's got to show up to work sessions, but John is in our group, and well, John works every day until 5 o'clock. He's got his job. And so but our group time is to work from 5 to 6:30. We know John's going to be late. That's okay. Nobody's upset about it because he'll get there as quick as he can, and he's usually there by 10 after anyway. It's fine. So a norm, yeah, everybody's got to show up, but we know John's going to be late because he works, and we're all okay with that. That's normal for our group interaction. So that's rules and norms as they apply to groups. All right. So moving forward, let's talk about roles, because this is where some of the secret sauce starts to happen. So role emergence. I'm going to break it down. So jobs are the things that get the job done. So these are things that can be assigned or volunteered. So I'm going to do the literature review, or I'm going to do the research. I'm going to find the things out. Okay. I'm going to write the paper part of it. I'm going to do the slides. I'm going to do the whatever, right? I'll be the actor, I'll have this role, I'll have that role. So like when people think of roles, they're thinking of the jobs. So I've distinguished here for us. So these are the jobs that can be assigned or volunteered. Roles, in terms of small group communication, are things that emerge. It's how people engage with the group. And typically students are falling blindly into these typical patterns. And that's where breakdowns will happen. If their typical patterns all happen to be positive patterns, then that group work is going to go fine. But if people in the group have typical patterns that are detrimental to getting the work done, that's where we have problems and challenges. And so the strategy that I'm going to suggest, even though I know Kristen's teaching my same class, but everybody else, you're not teaching my same class. So even though you're not teaching communication, small group theory, any of that, my strong suggestion is spend about 2 or 3 minutes in your class, or give them a worksheet or something to shine a light on roles. Because when I do this, I can see light bulbs flicking on in the classroom and like above their little heads. And they're like, wait a minute, what? And they recognize themselves in these roles. So let's talk about what those roles are. All right. There's 2 types of roles. The first type are task roles. The second are social maintenance roles. So the task roles are all about getting the job done. And there are these 5. So an information agent is the person who offers facts, experiences, and input to get the job done. Okay, so this is the person who says, yeah, I'm going to do the research. And then they bring the research to everybody and this is what I found out. Okay. This is also someone who is, the people in the group have a question are like, how many pages does this paper have to be? How long do we get for the speech? The information agent's the one who's going to like dig through Canvas and find that answer and be like, this is what the answer is to that question. So this is the person who's offering facts, experiences, and input to get the task done. The elaborator is someone who summarizes where the group is. So a lot of times we'll have when if you all have worked in groups, I know. So you get together with your group and somebody says, "All right, so this is what we accomplished last time. This is what we said we were going to work on this time. Is everybody good with that? Are we all right? Are we good moving forward with that? Do we have anything we have to accomplish? Did anybody do something while we were away that we don't know about? Whatever." The elaborator is the person who summarizes where the group is. Okay. The initiator, and I tell my students, you're going to run into problems if you don't have an initiator. An initiator is the person who begins the process of getting started. What do I mean? All right, so we've agreed we're going to meet at Starbucks. And that's just going to be one of our group norms. Like, oh, let's meet there. That sounds great. And maybe Sarah does bring chocolate chip cookies. Great. So Sarah brings the cookies. And maybe it's and I go this with my students again. So maybe it's spring formal time and everybody's talking about what's coming up, or like, here we are in the fall and like big football games coming up. Let's talk about the football game. Did you go to that game? Wasn't that awesome? And everybody's excited and they're chit-chatting and talking about the thing. Well, generally the groups don't have all afternoon to meet, right? They've decided we're going to meet for an hour, we're going to meet for 2 hours, we're going to meet during a class session, whatever. If they don't have an initiator, they will be chit-chatting and sipping on their coffee and nibbling on their cookies and talking about the football game or talking about the spring formal or whatever until somebody's like, oh, I gotta go, I got a class. What? They're missing an initiator. So you need a person. And again, sometimes people just blindly fall into these roles and somebody's like recognizes like, hey, we got to get going, y'all. All right, let's get started. But if a group is missing a person who does that role because like, well, I don't want to tell everybody what to do. I don't want to be bossy. I don't want to, whatever. I don't want to rock the boat. Everybody seems like we're having a good time. The thing doesn't get done. So I like to point this one out. The administrator is a person who keeps track of activities and time. So an administrator might be like, all right, we've been doing great today. Looks like we've got a half hour left. So oftentimes people who are elaborators can be administrators. They may fall into both of those roles. And then the gatekeeper is a person who manages the flow of communication between the members and others outside the group. And I tell my students, this is how you know who the gatekeeper is. When I assign the group and they get together, somebody goes, okay, I'll start a group me. That's your gatekeeper. Like that's how you know right away. Okay, I'm gonna start a group text. What's everybody's phone number, right? Like that person is a gatekeeper. Also, the person who's like, all right, so the information agent's looking through looking through the syllabus or Canvas, and they're trying to find the details, and they're like, I don't see the details on this. And the gatekeeper goes, all right, I'll email the professor. And so that's another task that gatekeeper role takes on. So all of these tasks are about getting the job done, very specifically getting the job done. I would say, honestly, most people will fall into these roles naturally. The ones you really want to focus on talking to your students about, and again, you don't have to spend a ton of time going over these. Even if you just share these and then highlight the initiator, make sure you've got an initiator. Make sure you have somebody who's managing the flow of information and communication so that we all know how to connect with each other. And beyond that, they're going to fall into these other roles. But the next group are the ones that are where things can go really great or fall apart. So these are social roles. Depending on which literature you're reading, their social maintenance, their relational, whatever. It's all about the relationships of people in the group and how they communicate with each other. So we've got 3 positive and 3 you hope never are in any group that you're ever in. So the first 3, positive, a harmonizer. This is a person who smooths over differences. I really want to do this product for our infomercial. Well, I really want to do this product for our infomercial. And like they're both stalwart. I really believe this is a thing. The harmonizer comes in and says, hey, you know what? I like both those ideas. Maybe we could do something where we combine them, or maybe like this is a person who's going to like come up with ideas to help ease that tension of two people like ugh. And that's a silly example because, and I always laugh and I'm like, let's say you're going to do an infomercial on a pen. No, I want to do my black pen. No, I want to do a water bottle. Like, and they laugh and it's fun. But it helps them understand like, okay, yeah, because there is going to be conflict. So you want to make sure that there's somebody who's a harmonizer. The second is a sensor. This is someone who takes the emotional pulse of the group. So let's say they're all busy and they don't have any time to get together. And they always laugh at me when I say this, except 8 a.m. on Sunday morning. And they're like, what? And so this is the time that our group has decided because there's too many of us and we're all too busy. And that's when we're going to get together. So the sensor gets, they're all there and everybody's kind of like, dragging, they had their coffee because they went to Starbucks first. But maybe halfway through, everybody's kind of like people aren't really, speaking up as much. And maybe some people are looking at their phones a little bit. And maybe the sensor goes, you know what? I feel like maybe we all could use a 5-minute break and, do what we need to do, go check email, use the restroom, whatever. And we'll just meet right back here if that's okay with everybody. Sound good? So they're taking the emotional pulse of the group. They're noticing how people are feeling and drawing attention to that so that we can make sure that people are feeling engaged and part of the action. The third is a negotiator. This is a person who balances the group's individual needs. And so the example I use with my students is this. I'll say, all right, let's say that Ali's he's got a work schedule, and everybody's decided that, well, the rest of us can meet this day. The negotiator is going to go, yeah, but Ali can't meet at that time. Remember, he said he has to work. And then I pause and I go, how would you feel if someone recognized your work schedule that you mentioned, a half hour ago or the first meeting, and that you always work every Friday and you can't get together, and they remember that and they speak up on your behalf? How would you feel? And they all like go, like I belong in that group. Like somebody listened to me. Like somebody cares about me. Like, yes, that's what we want. So those are the positive roles. Now let's talk about the ones nobody ever wants. The blocker. So a blocker is a person who blocks the forward progress. This is the person who's like, we're going to either do this black pen or I'm not going to do this project. Okay, this is this is a person who's blocking that progress. This is a person who is what in whatever ways. And so they're physically not allowing the group to move forward. Okay. An avoider. This one is very common in classrooms with students. This is a person who either doesn't show up, they don't do the work that they've either volunteered to do or have been assigned to do, voluntold to do, or they show up and they're like this, right? So yeah, I followed the rule. I was at the meeting, but they're not engaged, right? I'll do this with my student. Yeah, sure, whatever you guys want, right? That's an avoider. Somebody who's avoiding not only building relationships, but also avoiding getting the work done in whatever capacity that looks like. So an avoider. The last one is a recognition seeker. And and so a recognition seeker is the person who creates drama. This is the person who everything's got to be about them. This is the person who's like always going to be upset about all of the things all of the time. Some of us have these people in our families, and that's fine. We love them anyway. But recognition seeker, in terms of group dynamics, this causes problems in the group. This is someone who's like, oh, did you hear what so and so said about so and so? They didn't like your idea. They didn't, like, okay. And so, what I say to my students, and I've got it on the next slide, so we'll do that. So now that we know what these are, let's talk about the different strategies. But one of the things that I say to my students is, if you're saying to yourself, every group I've ever been in has been horrible, you're going to have to hold a mirror up to yourself right now. Every group I've ever been in has drama. And I say, what's the one common denominator in all of those groups? And I pause and I let that land for a second. And that's where some more light bulbs pop on. And they're like, oh, I see. Right. So once people understand what these roles are, once they know that they exist, right? Beyond, like, they know the jobs exist. Like, we have to do these jobs to get the thing done. But once they know that the roles exist and that they have the power to choose what role they want to be, it changes their understanding and and oftentimes their behavior. And here's what I tell them. I say, listen, if you're normally in other groups that you've been in one of these three categories on the right side, if you're normally a blocker, avoider, or recognition seeker, let's just say for the next 2 weeks, you decide to take that mantle off and just put it over there for a little while, and you can be that in other groups. But for this group, for these people and this project, let's focus on being one of the three on the left. Think about how you might be able to be someone who's a harmonizer or a negotiator, or even paying attention to other people's emotions in the group to help move the thing forward. Just for this 2 weeks, and also maybe for the rest of your life. But just for these 2 weeks anyway, we'll give it a go and just see how it goes for you. See how it goes for you, because it may go differently than ever. So understanding this is the secret sauce, this maintenance of relationships. So when students realize they have this power to choose their roles, you don't have to fall into blindly. You can decide, I'm going to pay attention to people and I'm going to make sure that everybody is listened to in this group. I want to take that role on. That's awesome. And they set the rules for engagement with each other, and it's their rules. If you set the rules for them, but if they work together in their first, 10, 15, 20 minutes of meeting together, and they establish a few ground rules for working together that everybody agrees on, group work begins from a deeper level of understanding. And that's what allows those really positive outcomes to occur. All right, so some more strategies and tips. Number one, you want to make sure you're providing basic information to students about rules and roles. And that might be something new. That might be something that you have not yet tried about doing that. What also has worked is have groups create their own rules and submit them to you, because you can say create your own rules, but if we don't ask them to submit them, maybe they're not all going to write them down. Maybe they're all not going to necessarily know them. What if there's somebody who's in the group who wasn't there on the first date, right? So I make them submit them to me and also then make sure that they're all aware of them. Explain in advance, what is the procedure for group problems and what's your level of involvement? So that's really important. And I do something that is, I was telling Leanne and Lindsay, like, I don't have anything controversial in this. This might be the one thing that's controversial. So I tell them on the day that I assign the group project, all of the details, everything they need. And I've been doing this for years now. And any questions that people have asked in the past, they're all in Canvas. They're all in with the assignment. Every question that's come up, and no new questions have come up in the last year or two. So we're good. I'm feeling pretty good about all the details that are in there. Take a look, read through it all. If you have any questions before midnight tonight, email them to me. I'm not emailing you back at midnight. I'll email you back when I'm, looking at my computer in the morning. But before midnight tonight, anything after midnight tonight, I am not answering any questions. And I know that seems mean, and I'm not trying to be mean, and I'm not trying to be horrible, but here's why. I'm not a member of your group. I'm not in your group. I'm not part of your group. When you involve me as part of your group, that takes away the group dynamics. And part of this assignment is learning how to manage being in a group together and being successful in a group. So you all can decide and maybe make this a rule, right? Or discuss amongst yourselves. What are you going to do if somebody doesn't come to every meeting? What are you going to do if somebody is suddenly sick and can't be at meetings and they want to come? And then I offer them as many suggestions as I can. Like, are you going to let that person come via Zoom or on FaceTime with everybody? Are you going to, what if somebody does blow everything off? How are we going to handle that? And then allow time and then another thing that I do is I allow time for group work. So I tell them what my level of involvement is going to be nothing. After today, like, you all are good. You can figure this out. I know you can. And, I I get them excited and motivated. And so they understand, again, always telling them why, always why, always why, always why. And then I do give them an outlet at the end to tell me everything that happened in the group. So that way, and I've got that on my next slide. So, and then another thing that has been great is I always allow class time for group work, because if I'm going to make them do this thing, I know they're all busy and I know they all have a ton of stuff going on and lots of activities and all the things. And I know one time when they're free, it's my class period. I know they're all available during that time. So I give them that time and I don't make them come to the classroom on that time. Our class is one of those classes where we're required to take attendance. I don't know what everybody else is, but we're required to take attendance. So those days I don't, I'm like, I'm just not taking attendance those days, because if they're refilming somewhere, I've had students do, they did like a rock climbing apparatus. It was fascinating infomercial, and they went to IAMS. Well, you can't meet in our classroom and then get to IAMS and then get back and find parking, the whole thing, like, in that hour and 20 minutes. So I let them meet wherever they want to meet for their group and do whatever they want to do so they can have locations, etc. So I allow class time for group work so they can get that done. All right, I see we have a question. Hi, Rachel.
Hi, Felicia. Thank you. And you might answer this in your next slide, so I apologize if I'm jumping the gun. Um, so I did my first group project last semester, and I was always telling the students, come to me, early on if there's someone who's not involved, we can talk to them, find out what's going on.
Yeah.
And despite saying this, I still had people like the day before the final part, we had multiple parts of the project, and then, like the day before the last part was due, they said, actually, Rachel didn't do anything the entire semester. What should we do about this?
Yeah.
And it was like, oh my gosh. So I don't know if you have any tips about that.
Yes. So I would suggest, if you're doing a full semester project, I would suggest check-ins periodically throughout, and I would have them complete. Let me see what my next slide is. Yeah. So these are some other strategies. I have my students grade each other for a portion of the assignments points. So, and I have them fill out a little worksheet where they answer questions about how everybody else engaged. You could do something like this along the way where you say, all right, you're gonna and you decide how many points it's going to be. But mine, I think my whole assignment might be 175 points, and 50 of those points are assigned by each other. Like it's meaty, and I make it that way so that, and it turns out in our whole course is only 1,000 points. So that's 5% of their entire grade in the class that's being assigned by their peers. Now, I do have a little asterisk, like I reserve the right to make any changes on these, because occasionally something could happen. I have never had to do that though, because I can see very clearly from how people have graded each other. And I have different categories like reliability, accountability, communication, like different categories of how people can interact with each other. And they grade on each one. And then, they get a score out of 10, and then I average the scores across the board, and that works really well. So in your case, I would have them either do something like that along the way, because you'll clearly be able to see like, oh, okay, it looks like I need to talk to Rachel. And if you want to do that, or I would send an email to the whole group and I would say, it looks like one of your group members is not engaging. Let me know if you need help with that, based on our check-in piece or whatever. And you can decide how you want to move forward and discuss with your class. Like, how would you want to move forward with this? How do you want me to engage? Students really love to be part of the process of understanding, or of creating what happens next. What are the consequences? What does that look like? How are we engaging? They love to be part of that process. And specifically when it comes to group work, why not enroll them in this part of the process? So that really tends to work well. And then again, that feedback mechanism where they report on the group, and I ask them like, and you wouldn't have to do this, like who played what role or whatever, like we're learning group comm theory, but like, was there any, but I do ask, was there anybody who took over and did everything? Was there anybody who didn't do anything? Or, I obviously use different words, but short version. Is there somebody who, was a total slacker? I don't ask in those words, but that's the meaning of the question, right? So I can see that. What were there other challenges that your group encountered? What were they? And then I always finish with a clearinghouse question. Is there anything else not covered on this that I need to know? And last semester, I had two or three students. Usually it's like, nope, everything's covered. I had like paragraphs. I was like, wow, okay, something happened in this group. Let me see. And so, and it was, it was a typical situation, but they ended up with a good result with everybody. And like that's what all the paragraphs kind of ended up with. And I was like, all right, they figured out a way to resolve it on their own. Go students. So all right. And I see we've got other questions. Rachel, does that help? Does that give you some ideas?
Yes, thank you. I like the idea of having quantitative points. I just asked them to write a paragraph of who did what, and I think
Yeah.
points sounds like a good way to go.
Yeah. Yeah. I like it a lot, and it makes them accountable to each other. And the people who may have been slackers, I mean, the slackers were like hardcore slackers will always be hardcore slackers, and they're just not gonna. And you see that, like everybody gets 50 across the board, and then somebody gets 34, and you're like, ooh, okay. Like, how did that person get a 34 out of 50? And it's every once in a while I'll see somebody like below 10. I was like, wow. And honestly, it's not generally a surprise to me as the instructor, because that same student who the other students didn't, because they didn't show up and they weren't responsible for getting their things done, yep, they has also haven't turned in assignments to me, they also haven't been in class, they also haven't, they also have showed that same level of responsibility throughout the rest of the semester. So it's generally not a surprise when I see those numbers come in, but it tends to be rare. And I'm also often very pleasantly surprised, because we go through some of this, and all of this we go through in my class. We go through this, and those people like maybe think twice to themselves, like maybe I should, oh wait, they're going to grade me, maybe I could do a little better this time. So yeah. All right, I've got lots of other comments in the chat. Also, if you've implemented something successfully, because a lot of you love group work and have done group work for a long time, I would love to hear what your awesome tips are for everybody else. Like, we're here to share, and I'm happy to take any questions. I love how I describe a recognition seeker. Thank you. Yes. All right. So thanks for that. I think it's Kylie. There is no role of leader in the group. So leadership, I've done lots of leadership training and consulting over the years. So leadership is part of being in a group. But if we go back to the group, I'm going to go back a few slides. If we go back to these task roles, and I point this out to the students all the time. So someone who's initiator could seem like a leader. Hey, let's get started, everybody. But also someone who's a gatekeeper, like, all right, everybody, how are we going to communicate with each other? Can we use WhatsApp? Does that sound fine? Or should we use, group me? Like, that person could seem like a leader. An info agent, like coming and telling everybody, this is what it looks like we have to do. All of these, like, yes, a leader can show all of these roles, but in actually small group comm theory, there are some discussions that say the person who is the leader, and I have my students play on this because then we talk more about leadership, and this isn't a conversation about leadership, so that's why I left it off. But the person who is the leader is the one who says, hey, let's do a black Sharpie. Would that be fun? And in fact, last semester I did have students, they did a number 2 pencil, and it was one of the funniest, most interesting infomercials. And the person who came up with the idea, that's the person who's the leader. Because why? That's the first decision that gets made, and the rest of the group follows. If that decision doesn't get made, the group project doesn't get done. So that's why we call that person the leader. But when we talk about, and then I break down, like, what do we think of when we think of leadership? And I have them share all different kinds of things, and a good listener, and blah blah blah, and we go through the whole thing. And I'm like, yes, but you also don't necessarily have to be assigned a leader, because there's different leadership styles. We just got to get this job done. So don't worry about who's being a leader or not being a leader. Let's figure out who's going to take on the different jobs, and then what different role might you want to play, and then you'll, do what you're going to do. So anyway, I'm glad. Love that. So yeah, so there's not a lot of pressure on a particular student. Absolutely. Um, Recently made a change for students identify their roles and responsibility plus norms in the outline page, and it's been a positive experience because yeah, it gives everybody the opportunity to step into that feeling of leadership. So I love that. It's really great. And there's our worksheet thing. Ditto two portions, peers grade each other. Very eye opening. Yes, it is very eye opening when they grade each other. Because again, we're not there. We're not in the group. We can't see all of the group interaction all the time. Even if we have them work together and in the classroom and we're there wandering around, we still aren't there for every moment of every group. So it's really fantastic. I love that. Um, you know what, Sally, Kristen is right. Yes and no about the ratting each other out. If there is somebody who has really slacked, they will stand up and say it. And because I don't, this is what I often say. I'll say, listen, sometimes somebody's in a season of their life where they got a lot, really, like a lot is happening for them, and maybe in other groups in another time in another part of the semester, maybe they would have been somebody who was there all the time and did all of the things. But in this particular case or this particular instance, I had a student last semester who has had a parent in New Jersey who was going through cancer and end of life situations. Like, uh, that's, are we going to hold that against that kid? No. I mean, how can you, right? Like, sometimes life happens. So, and I use extreme examples like that. I had another semester where a student was deployed in the military and he had to be gone during the whole group project. He was in Italy. And I was like, but you got to be part of this. And so they figured it out. Like, he was with them and he like zoomed with them in the beginning when he could, before he was in a top secret place and couldn't be on Zoom. And then he contributed, like they figured out a way for him to contribute. And they were like, he did what he could, and it worked out great. Like, fantastic. He was there for the presentation day. So he, like I tell them, like, sometimes people fall into these negative roles and, they're not doing it in a negative, in a bad way. So, and also sometimes they are. And I'm asking you to be honest about group work here because I want to see what you have learned. That's what I'm looking for, is what have you learned? And sometimes they don't, like somebody, I've seen rankings all over the place. So that, everybody in the group gets 50 and somebody else in the group gets 45. That's them ratting each other out. But a 45 out of 50, all right, they got a 45 out of 50. That's not that they're not getting, their grade isn't getting hurt. But then in the worksheet, I kind of see what happened. So that's why I do it, but that's why I have both ways. So yeah. Um, might want to wait until too late. Tell them there might be another issue, emergency, helping their team member if they let them know quickly. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's just a matter of teaching them to communicate, right? I mean, this is all part of also growing up, as we know. And so this is their first time, that maybe this is the first time they've ever worked in a group, is this group project that you assign. And they don't understand what it means to be in a group and be relied upon and have that level of interdependence that's different than being a member of a family, or being a member of just a friend group, or on on their football team, and they just have to tell their coach, hey, I can't be there on a day or whatever, right? So this is also a process of them learning how to participate in something that maybe they haven't participated in before. So and that, maybe sometimes that could be a hard lesson. All right, let's see. Ben says, I have some of the group work be individually graded, so students who do not contribute. Yes, that's another great strategy. Have something be individual, that this is your own grade. That's the worksheet that I have them do afterwards. I'm grading them individually, not just on like, how did the work go, but what did you learn about leadership? What role did you play? Explain your roles. Explain why you did your roles that you did. Explain blah blah blah. Like, I have them do that individually, so that part of the assignment is definitely that. Also, group feedback and reflection papers 2 times during the process. Yeah, so it sounds like you've got a longer group project than mine. Thanks for great ways to talk to students about being part of group language. Yeah, you're welcome. At the beginning, I have them create an agreement that includes steps they will take to work out their issues. Yep, help to invest in the process. I can help them. They follow the policy for dealing with problems that arise, then they can process it again. Absolutely, yeah. So Phyllis, that's exactly it. Like, have them write their rule, like have them write their own little mini syllabus for their group project, right? And then they know this is what we have all decided is expected of us. It works great if they collaborate on that, right? We don't want to, like, you don't necessarily want to have one student like, I'll write all the rules. Like, no, that's not, that's not going to go well. But, or like, I'll write up some stuff and you all let me know and we can change it or add it or whatever. Like, okay, that's a little different. But anyway, yeah, having them decide together, what are we going to do if there's a problem? It helps a lot. So final thoughts. Sounds like a lot of you have had some great successes with groups. I hope it gave you some ideas. I just want to suggest maybe consider sharing some of the role emergence things with your classes and have them figure out what their rules are going to be and what happens if we run into problems long before problems happen. That's the easiest time to decide. And you may find that even more students love doing group work in your class. Thanks, friends.